we are harmed in relationships and we are healed in relationships.
It's not necessarily always about the event, but rather how the body processes the event.
So raise your hand if you've ever worried that somebody was mad at you because they ended a text with a period. Yeah, I have been there too. I have all the t-shirts. There is a way out of this reactivity that starts with awareness. And that's why we're here with our guest today, psychotherapist and, shall I say, just viral sensation, Meg Josephson, who's here to help us just unpack all of this, understand why we feel this way, where it comes from, and more importantly, what to do about it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, congratulations on the book and on this body of work that you're compiling. And maybe we should just start with an intro. I mean, telling I'm your number one fan, but just in case they might not have heard of you already, just a little bit about who you are, what you do, and also how you got into this subject.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My name is Meg Josephson. I'm a licensed psychotherapist based in San Francisco. I have a private practice here. And I mean, gosh, I definitely it feels cliche, but I definitely got into this through my own experiences. Specifically this question of, are you mad at me? I went to my first therapist when I was 20 years old. I was living in New York at the time. This is actually how the book opens up, is in the office with her. And I asked her in our conversation that we were having, why do I always think people are mad at me? And it's a very full circle thing that I'm revisiting it with this book. But I remember going to her with just such a sense of urgency. Fix me. Tell me what is wrong with me. And tell me what to do so I can be fixed and healed and perfect. But I grew up in a home that was quite volatile, and there was a lot of rage, and things were not talked about. But if they were screamed and yelled. And there was a lot of addiction from my dad. And I didn't realize it growing up. I think that's often the case. I'm sure you can attest to that as well with your work, is, we realize it later when we have the language for it.
Right.
And when we have someone else to validate that experience. I was so on edge. I was so hypervigilant, so hyper aware, such a peacekeeper. And we can talk about that, certainly, like the different ways that shows up and the roles that we can play. But my job was keeping things peaceful. And I did that through perfectionism and being relentlessly positive and upbeat. And it took a toll on me after a decade and a half or 2 decades. And anyway, so I come to this point because when I went to that therapist, I said, why do I always think people are mad at me? What I came to realize is that hypervigilance that I felt growing up had just changed forms. It was still there, but it was, instead of, is my dad drinking, or is he using, or is he in a bad mood? It's, oh, I'm going to get fired because my boss just said, can we chat? Do you have a minute?
Do you have a minute? Flooded. Yeah, I get
exactly.
it.
So it just changed forms, but that hypervigilance was still there. And for me, the Fawn response and that framework, which is what Are You Mad at Me is about, and complex trauma, and just all this whole framework was so validating. And that is ultimately what has become my niche in therapy work, in my clinical work, and really my passion. So I guess that's where we are today.
That's amazing, though. Okay, folks, there you have it. Therapists, we're not born, we're made. And I just want to say this, though. I mean, I think, side note, how amazing it is that you did your not just your own personal work, which is always incredible, but like we're able to turn these very valuable life experiences that gave you so much insight and empathy and understanding into something that is now so incredibly valuable and important for other people. I mean, I think that that's just phenomenal. And I want to recognize you for this emotional alchemy that you've done for the service of others. It's really important. And I mean, even for myself, like when I started reading your book, like and I mean, and I could go into some of my circumstances and they're different than what you described. But I mean, for many, many years of my life, three primary emotional groups we think of, like mad, sad, happy. Like, no, for me, there's this whole other category of they're mad at me.
Yes.
Like, and it is such a different space, that anxiety
So
about, right, exactly. And even just reading the first part of your book, it's like, I never really thought about it that way, but yeah. And so thank you on behalf of like the
Wow.
world.
I'm going to take that with me. That really means a lot. Thank you.
Well, it's important. But let's dig into this. I mean, I'm sure many of our friends here who are hanging out with us right now are like, me too. And one of the things I would love to hear you talk about the most, or I mean, maybe just to start with, is like, where does this come from? I mean, you talked about circumstances, events, but like in an emotional sense, there's this immediate trigger that happens in the face of neutral things. I mean, like nothing is happening, but we interpret it as somebody's mad at me, they're upset with me, something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that?
I think when we learn to be hypervigilant of our environment, people's reactions and perceptions, we use positive feedback as a way to show ourselves that we're safe. And so I think neutrality can feel very triggering and activating because it's not that external validation that we're striving for.
It's ambiguous.
It's ambiguous, and that feels scary. It's unknown. If it's not an exclamation point, if it's not a lot of emojis, if it's not, oh my God, you did so amazing, but someone was just like, nice job. It's disappointing. It's, oh, do you not, I think at least unconsciously, do you not like me? Do you not approve of me? Did I do something wrong? And of course, that is tapping at a core belief that was formed. But yeah, I think neutrality and silence also feel very triggering, i.e., someone's not responding to you for a while, or I guess that's my only example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can feel very activating.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and particularly, I mean, it makes so much sense. And it's a known thing. I mean, people who grow up in patently abusive, unsafe environments develop what might appear to the casual observer to be psychic abilities because they are so attuned to like what's going on with other people, because that was incredibly adaptive. They had to be. Feels like they can read your mind a little bit. And like to be in that situation and be able to see things coming is so protective. But I think then, and there's a spectrum with that, right? But what can also happen is that there's a difference in being able to spot actual danger and having a trauma response that feels like you're in danger, even when you're not actually in danger, because that can create all kinds of new problems for the way you feel, but also your relationships. I mean, so that's why we need to manage this. And I will also say, well, maybe you could talk more about this. I mean, there's a spectrum, and I think that you don't have to grow up in like a capital A abusive home to be internalizing some of this stuff either. Do you have any insight into that?
Oh yeah. Oh, everything you just said is so great. We could talk about this forever. This instinct that we have to be hypervigilant, to be aware, to be alert. We're not trying to turn this off. We couldn't possibly. This is an unconscious, brilliant survival mechanism. it's really about, and sometimes we need it, especially if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, if you're some part of a marginalized group where you're trying to survive in a society. We need a paycheck. We need to appease our boss sometimes. Like, we're not being unrealistic here, but rather, to your point, when are we doing it when we don't need to be? When are we doing it when we're actually safe? And that's when our awareness comes in. And we'll get to that. But I want to speak to what you're saying because it's so important. I think the reason why this alertness and this rumination tendency, overthinking, what do they think of me? Hyper focused on the external. I think the reason why it's so underdetected is because it happens a lot of the times through an accumulation of, quote, micro moments. And I say micro not to undermine it, but I think it's important that we define complex trauma here, which is, and I'd love to hear your angle on it as well. I think of it as it's an accumulation of moments, maybe everyday moments, but a lot of them over a period of time where we are feeling unsafe, unseen, unheard, unloved in the presence of people that are supposed to keep us safe. And we don't have a source of safety to return to. When that happens again and again, day in and day out, that's complex trauma. And I think of trauma, and I think this is maybe where people invalidate their experiences. Well, I don't know, like it wasn't physical, or it wasn't this big thing that I saw on this movie that happened to someone. It's not necessarily always about the event, but rather how the body processes the event and the impact that the event or the many events has on our body. And so I remember sitting in my first therapist's office as well. And I said, but I'm fine. I mean, I turned out fine. So why does it matter? And yeah, I was fine. Like I was getting good grades and I was the good kid, right? But internally there was so much happening. And so there's a lot of self-invalidation. There's a lot of shame. Maybe it wasn't that bad. And I do think a large part of that as well is there wasn't someone, for many of us who are resonating with this question of, are you mad at me? There probably wasn't someone in your early environment validating your experience. In fact, there was probably a lot of invalidation. Oh, you're being dramatic. Oh, come on. And you're overreacting or gaslighting. There wasn't someone saying what you're feeling is real. And that is so confusing. And so making sense of it after the fact is is really confusing because we have to be the ones to validate ourselves. And that can be, that's a process in and of itself.
What a beautiful explanation. I mean, thank you so much for describing it so nicely. Oh my gosh, can you see what we're doing to each other? We're like being super complimentary and positive and affirming. That is interesting, Meg. But I think like, okay, this is again a sign. But anyway, I was sitting here quite genuinely, appreciatively listening to what you were saying about the types of complex trauma and just thinking to myself that we really need a new category of trauma that I don't think is oftentimes respected or validated, let's say, by the current mental health institutions. I mean, if you go to the DSM and look up the diagnostic criteria for something like PTSD, it is like you were going to die or you watched somebody else almost die. I mean, like these very dramatic life circumstances, when in reality, relational trauma is not any of those things. And because we are so hardwired for attachment bonding, we have very real attachment needs. When we experience these kinds of relational traumas, it impacts us so deeply. And to your point too, like the way that human beings develop, like early childhood is by this mirror response, right? That we don't know how we feel or who we are until somebody else reflects that back to us. And that's like when we're 1 or 2 years old. And it's not us being needy. It's like that's literally how human beings are psychologically developed. And when you don't have that, it it has an impact. It really does. And so what you're saying is just incredibly affirming, but there's a lot of science behind it. And some of the science has not fully been, how do we say this? Is not part of the recognized conversation in some of the mental health establishment. Is that
Absolutely.
the right way to say that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
would think about it. The
Yeah.
relational piece is so
Hmm.
important, and that's in the. I define it as this the fawn response, which we can certainly define as
I want
well.
to hear about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this, regardless, this hypervigilance. If you resonate with the question of "Are you mad at me?" Overthinking, something wrong with me. Often that's born from complex trauma, which we defined relational trauma, trauma that's happening in relationship to someone else. And what's so empowering, I think, is because this effect is born from complex relational trauma, it will also heal through relations. It'll heal by, we heal ourselves by showing this scared, really scared, protective part of ourselves. Look, I'm in relationship with someone and it's safe. I'm not in trouble. I'm not shamed for having needs. I'm not shamed for having emotions. We're showing that part over a period of time that's safe. And that's how healing happens. Like, in other words, just in the way that it took spirit, sorry, in the way that it took a span of time to develop that wound, it takes time as well to heal the wound. And I want that to be affirming more than frustrating, of every micro moment is healing this part of you that learned to be scared, and that's really special.
Yeah. Yeah. That I can't remember who said this, but so true. We are harmed in relationships and we are healed in relationships. And it's experiential. That is not something that you can learn. It's something that you have to experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think there's
Yeah.
often, I mean, I certainly had this belief of I need to, like, hide in a room and heal by myself, and then I'm good. And I do think we all naturally go through a bit of a cocoon phase of wanting to be alone, and I love being alone. This isn't negate quality alone time. I actually I talk about it a lot in my book, as you know. But rather, there's a difference between quality alone time and hyperindependence of, like, I need to figure this out on my own. And hyperindependence, I think, is wanting connection but pushing it away. And so we heal on our own through self-inquiry, through silence, through alone time, and we also heal with people. And that's really empowering, I think. I hope.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, okay. So just something that you've mentioned a couple of times since we started talking, the fawn response. For those of our friends here with us who haven't encountered that term before, tell us a little bit more about what this is, how it
Yeah.
works. Yeah.
So I think of this "Are you mad at me?" thinking as sort of a symptom of the fawn response, or an effect, or rather maybe a
Hmm.
manifestation of it.
Okay.
And let's just start with defining it, which is, I think a lot of us are familiar with fight or flight, our bodies, really primal survival responses. But we actually have four that we know of threat responses: fight or flight being the first two, freeze, and the fourth one is fawn. And it was actually just coined a little over a decade ago in 2013 by Pete Walker in his book CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving. Or yeah. And unlike the other three threat responses, the fawn response is when we're detecting some sort of threat, whether that threat is real or perceived or remembered, actually. So the threat doesn't need to actually be in front of us. There doesn't need to be the lion. It could be, you think your boss is mad at you and it's triggering some sort of response in you. The fawn response is about appeasing the threat, trying to impress it, proving yourself to it, satisfying it. So an example is like if your boss or a friend is being a little cold or standoffish, maybe your immediate reaction is to compliment them or to offer a favor. And I think there's so much to say here, but I think the reason I view this as the most common yet under-recognized trauma response. And I think it's because it's so rewarded. Like we get promotions for being people pleasers. We're, oh, you're such a good girl. You're so easy. And because we are while in their fawn response, we're hyper attuned to our external environment and our relationships. We're craving validation. And so it becomes this cycle of feeling threatened, fawning, getting validation. Okay. And then it just keeps going and it feels good to be liked. It feels good to be seen as good. And so it keeps going. But and sometimes we need to be doing it, like I said, to get a paycheck. There's so many instances where we would need to fawn for our safety. Sexual fawning is really, really common that I see in my work. And, but when we're doing it, like we we're talking about, unnecessarily, when we're actually safe, it has consequences where it's exhausting to be so hypervigilant. It's exhausting to overthink. It also really disconnects us from who we are. I talk about a moment where I had just graduated college and I went to Bed Bath and Beyond to pick out towels for my like 4x4 set.
God rest its soul.
And yeah, not knowing what my favorite color was. I was like, I don't even know what I like. And then I thought, let me go on Instagram and see what other people are doing. Let me see what's trending.
What should I like?
What should I like? What do other people like? And it was this moment. I still remember it so viscerally.
Yeah.
Who am I? Who am I when I'm not just copying other people's personalities? But this isn't to shame that. That was so, I needed to do that. I had to do that. I had to be on such high alert. But when we're so hyper attuned to the external, we lose connection with the internal. And so it's not that we are trying to block out the external, but rather exist in the internal world and the external world at the same time. So that's the goal.
Thank you for explaining that so beautifully. And like what an adaptive strategy that I think isn't really recognized, to be in the presence of a possible threat. And the way we manage this is to diffuse the threatening situation that could potentially hurt you by winning it over, by making it like you. And this is so incredibly useful. And I just want to say that if anybody is listening to this and being like, oh my God, I do that, to not interpret this as being necessarily a negative thing, but like to look at the history of your life and be able to say to yourself, of course I did. And you know what? That probably kept me safe and led me to have much better outcomes than I might have otherwise because I did that in those moments. And so like, not another thing to beat yourself up about, but like, yay, you're here, you did it. And now we're here with Meg to be like, so let's talk about times that we might need to manage that when you are safe as an adult so that it doesn't create new problems for you, but how incredibly adaptive it is. Also in context of some of these other consequences it creates, being so focused on other people that you could really become disconnected.
Absolutely.
With yourself.
Very well said.
And can I just ask you one thing?
Yeah.
So, and I might be reading too much into this, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I really don't know what the research has to say here. Do you know or suspect that this type of fawning response might be different along gender identity lines? Like, is this a response that would be more common in females versus male identifying people, or not so much?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'll speak maybe less to research, because I don't know if there has been, but
Well, it's such a new thing. It might
it's a
not have been
new thing, but
explored
it's
yet.
also, it brings in, where research does talk about, is just
Mm-hmm.
socialization and socialized behaviors.
Mm.
So I think, what's important to pull out is the fawn response is about feeling safe by being liked and approved of and by doing more. And that's going to look different for different groups of people. So I think for women, uh, let me go back. It's a very, it's especially learned in childhood. If you grew up in a home that was tense or volatile, or you had critical caregivers or emotionally neglectful caregivers, let me do more to be loved. And then when we go into society, it's socialized as well, but we also need to exist and survive in these oppressive systems that we live in. So it's useful out in the world. I think for women, what being approved of and what fitting in looks like is being easy, agreeable, nice, grateful all the time, um, uh, not non-argumentative, like very socialized. Um, and then I think for men, I imagine it's, and I'm thinking of a specific, I'm thinking of a client that I share about in the book, of someone, he grew up in a really, really strictly religious home and was closeted. And so for him, blending in was overcompensating. He was overcompensating by being what he thought, what he believed was this like hyper masculine role of, like, he played football and he was like dating all these girls, and when he really wanted to take film classes. And so he was silencing himself in order to fit in with the environment that he was in. So that made sense for him. It's going to look different. If you're neurodivergent, it's masking yourself, masking in social situations as a way to fit in. Um, I talk about, model minority being a really big fawn response. Let me fit into what the white dominant majority deems as good and worthy of approval. And so there's so many ways in which different identities bring about the need to fawn, but the thread is the same, which is my safety comes from being approved of, being liked, being agreeable, and that's going to manifest in different ways. So maybe listeners can use it as a reflection point of, like, what are my different identities? Would you have a disability that's visible or invisible? What's your gender, sex, sexuality, race? How does that feed into the foundational
Mm-hmm.
need to fawn in the
Yeah.
first place?
Well, and also, I mean, all of those identities. And also, I think that I just want to highlight the fact that, also just basic standard issue white men can, I would think, run into some of this in power situations, like the hierarchical situations, employment situations, where, um, there are a lot of good reasons to establish relationships and have people like you, and that there can also be some of that. But I do think that there can be a difference, because I think that maybe fighting back a little bit more, or perhaps being a little bit more belligerent or having stronger opinions, can be perceived as being a very positive thing, uh, in certain spaces. And so that could actually be a form of, even, I mean, I guess, fawning by
Oh,
conforming to what those
interesting.
expectations are. So I don't want to leave. I think sometimes we can become so focused on talking about all kinds of identities that
Hmm.
we need to make space for everybody's identity. And that, I wonder if it's a part of it too.
Oh
So,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's the same of, how do I fit
yeah,
into what's expected of me and what will
yeah,
minimize rejection and maximize approval.
yeah,
And there's so many gender expectations.
totally.
So for a man or a white man,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, perhaps it's being, you know,
my husband, and I have talked to so many guys who feel this way, he's an artist. He doesn't give a crap about sports, has never watched a football game in his life. And in some situations, like just, will feel like he needs to present a certain way or be able to talk about certain things to almost fit in and like that very much flying under the radar. So anyway, there's a lot here.
We all have a body.
Yeah.
It's in all of our bodies. So however that's showing up in whatever context or circumstance or relationship, it is real for all of us. So, yeah.
Well, anyway, fantastic discussion. And so what I'm also wondering, I mean, maybe we could shift into this as, so I'm a marriage and family therapist. So I'm always thinking about like relational context for things. And, the pieces that we've been talking about, like a disconnection from what you really feel or what you might really want. And also this like reflexive response of being pleasing and agreeable. Can we just talk about what that does to the ability to set healthy boundaries in relationships?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, take us into that.
When we're stuck in the fawn response, remember, we're so enmeshed with the external. So we actually, what I feel and how I view it is there's no boundary between our inner and outer worlds. Like it's all just combined because I can know I'm okay when you are regulated. I can feel regulated when you're regulated. So it's so
enmeshed.
intertwined.
Yeah.
How could we possibly have boundaries if we're not even aware that there's an internal world happening? That we have our own needs and emotions and desires and preferences. So, and this is the way I view it, is like first tapping into the internal, coming back. What do I want? What do I think? What are my opinions? What are my dreams? And I think if we're getting more into the tools part of this,
I'd love to. Yeah.
Integrated is, I think it can be a pause. I think a pause is a people pleaser's best friend, where we can, knowing that the fawn response is an unconscious mechanism, to pause, it brings it into the conscious mind, and we're choosing a new path because we're telling our bodies we're safe, we're here right now. What do I think of this? Before immediately asking for external validation, before immediately agreeing. That, I think that's a first step in boundary setting, because how can we set a boundary if we don't even know what we need? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Right.
I think it starts with the internal.
Step one.
What do you need? What do you need right now? And I think, oh my gosh, resentment is so important as an emotion to get to know, and such a good indicator that maybe a boundary is needed, because resentment is a sign that a need has been suppressed and silenced again and again and again. And resentment festers over time. Discomfort is temporary, but resentment festers. And so paying attention, it just means paying attention. What am I needing? What am I feeling? Do I feel resentful? Do I feel angry? Do I feel depleted? And again, this is a nuanced conversation. Sometimes we can't set a boundary. Sometimes we can't. But when we need to be fawning. However, what we can still do is acknowledge what's happening internally. In terms of boundaries, we can then move step 2 to the external, actually working on boundary setting.
Well, but just to validate what you're saying, though, I mean, I think that this is incredibly important and something that people need to get comfy with, which is hard. This idea that these dark emotions that we have been socialized into believing might be negative, like resentment, anger, like all those things that we're not supposed to feel. Like, they are your best friends. And what you're saying is they're like the fuel gauges on the dashboard, like you have, and to tap into those can give you insight into your own needs, rights, feelings, preferences, what color towels you prefer. I mean, that comes from dark emotions frequently. So thank you so much for saying that.
Oh, yeah. Emotions are messengers. They're telling us something. And what happens, I think, is, we have an emotion because we were conditioned, taught to shove it down when it's a quote negative emotion, or uncomfortable emotion.
Yeah.
And
Especially
often,
if you're mad. Yeah.
yes, I think for anger especially,
Yeah.
we learn to fear it because A, we witnessed it in pretty extreme ways, whether it was silent treatment, screaming, punishment. And so our caregivers may have been allowed to feel it all they wanted. But then when we felt anger, perhaps, oh, go to your room, or don't cry, you're making a big deal out of nothing. Like, we were shamed. There was shame for feeling it. And so, of course, if anger led to love being taken away, why would we allow ourselves to feel anger? It
Of
makes so much
course.
sense. It's so
Yeah.
protective. So
Exactly.
I think it's acknowledging, letting that anger be okay. It's an emotion. It's carrying information. Noticing if we immediately add shame to it. Can we lift that shame, knowing that anger, it's safe to feel it. It's okay to feel it now. And it starts by just acknowledging. And that can just be labeled, this is anger. I'm feeling anger right now. It can be as simple as that. Thank you.
No,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
good. Oh, so good.
love
Okay.
anger.
So
Love anger.
me too. That's like, it is actually my favorite emotion. All right. In the whole little Disney movie, Pixar, whatever.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Love it.
Certainly the funniest. But anyway, so there, that is step one, is like,
Yes, yes.
what do I feel? But then there's a
Mhm.
step two.
Yes. So I think boundaries are so interesting, and I think very misunderstood. I think they're conflated into a wall. And sometimes, certainly with relationships that are abusive or toxic, yes, boundaries can be a wall, and that's okay. And where I think it gets a little conflated is in relationships that are safe and healthy, boundaries are an opening because they're telling the other person, I'm letting you into my needs, and I haven't always done that. And I think for many people who resonate with the "Are you mad at me?" sort of thinking, maybe have felt, I need to perform, I need to be perfect, I can only show people the best parts of me, I need to be on all the time. And so to let someone in on what you need is such a form of emotional intimacy, because you don't do that with everyone. It means that you trust them and that you're safe with them. And so I think letting it be a form of closeness, because it's also saying, this is how I can be in relationship to you for a really long time. Like, I want to be in relationship to you, and this is what I need to make that happen, versus let me not set any boundaries, burn out, feel resentful toward you, and then probably need to distance myself because I'm too exhausted to keep going.
Yeah, totally. So it's
Um,
either me telling you how I feel, or you come home one day and all the furniture is gone. Like, these are the
exactly.
choices. And being able to say that out loud, like,
Yeah.
this is hard for me. I don't do this with people. It is very easy for me to say, okay, whatever, go along, and actually not be okay. And so for
Yes.
me to actually be saying these things to you out loud is an indication of how much I trust you to
Yes.
care and to be responsive.
I love how you model that
That's,
too, of like
yeah,
letting you can let them in on what you're practicing. Like,
right.
I'm working on healing this part of me, and this is really uncomfortable. It makes me want to hide, but I'm
Yeah.
practicing. I
Yeah.
love that. I think that's so good.
Thank you so much. That made me feel really good just there a minute.
Of course.
We're really
I
good at
mean
this.
it.
Well, I mean, but letting it in a variety of ways. And so for those tough conversations, helping your partner, your friend, or whoever, like, understand. But also, I think I have found it helpful in my own life. Okay, I'll share. You're going to think this is ridiculous, but so I too, I grew up always feeling like people were mad at me because my dad, not abusive, not a horrible person, like very well intentioned, but if he wasn't actually being critical, he was typically being sarcastic. And I think, like, those two things, even if somebody else thinks it's being funny, it was like, difficult to be in, and feeling like, you're always doing something wrong if somebody had negative commentary about it. Anyway, so I always felt this way, especially when I was younger. And for a very long time in my relationship with my husband, I would always be like, are you mad at me? I mean, he's like standing there making a coffee. And I'm like, are you mad at me? Like all the things. And so I think that this actually became a running joke in our house because like, I'll even do that now. Like, you haven't said anything to me since I walked into the kitchen. So are you mad at me? And he's like, yes, I wasn't actually, but since you said that, now I am definitely mad at you. And so it's like this,
self-fulfilling.
like, okay, all right, like
Oh my
walking that
gosh,
back.
yes.
But, like to have it be a thing that is recognized has
Yes.
actually been pretty helpful.
Absolutely. You're speaking to something so great too. The reassurance seeking can put such a strain on relationships. And that's why I like to differentiate reassurance versus validation.
Yeah.
Of reassurance seeking is about the content. Are you mad at me? Do you still love me? Do you think I look pretty?
Right. How about now?
Just, like put out the fire of anxiety, like just alleviate this. And for a second, no, I'm not mad at you. Yeah, I love you. No, I think you're beautiful. It puts it out for a second.
Yeah.
And then because it's not addressing the underlying feeling, it comes right back.
Totally.
It comes right back.
Like, well, that was yesterday. Can we talk about today? Like,
no, you're so not alone. Again, like this pattern, this is a younger part of us that's frozen in time in our bodies. We're not erasing this part. We're actually creating a relationship to it. Oh, you're scared. Okay. Yeah, you're safe. It's okay. It's knowing how to soothe this part of ourselves. Because as long as we're saying, if we're adding shame of what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? Why do I do this? We're actually just repeating the story we were told growing up, which is something's wrong with you. And so to be able to create a new relationship with that part is the relational healing that we all need, So, versus validation, it might include some reassurance. No, I'm not mad at you, but it gets also to the feeling. I think reassurance is a slow process of understanding. I want you to know what I'm feeling and I want to have a conversation about it. And is what I'm feeling legitimate? And so maybe it would be, hey, I'm feeling a little distant from you. And I feel like we haven't had any quality time. And it's bringing up some anxiety for me. I wonder if we could just have 5 minutes just to like be with each other. And that might be the feeling under, are you mad at me? But it lets the person in on something much deeper and it gives the other person the opportunity to see the emotion, which is just such an opportunity for closeness.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, so many good things. And you're so much fun to talk to. We could do this all day. And I want to be respectful of your time. This is so helpful though. And especially like what you're sharing about how to manage this when it comes up, how to manage it with other people, but also how to manage it with yourself and that like self reassurance. Are there any other things that maybe you have one other simple idea that you'd like to leave our listeners with? And of course, I mean, that you go into so much detail in your book about understanding where this comes from. I mean, really the process of addressing this in a deeper way. And I always worry, Meg, I have to tell you that people would hear something on a podcast or see a social media post and like believe that's the whole story. So we need to be really clear and be like, these are snack size little, like here's one almond of this whole meal that is like the actual process of healing from this, which I mean, my own life, like it is a multi-year endeavor, I would say, for most people. Okay. So with that in mind, is there another idea or something that you would want to leave our listeners with that would be maybe actionable, maybe helpful in the moment with the understanding that there's more?
Well, gosh, I'm so glad I relate to that so much of a snippet being taken out of context or it's taken as a black or white truth and everything has nuance. There's room, everything. There's context for everything. And I understand that and I'm constantly working through it. And actually there's a little bit of maybe this can lead into the takeaway.
Okay.
Which is I think a big part of the fawn response with this "Are you mad at me?" thinking is a fear of being misunderstood,
Mm,
a fear of being
yes.
misperceived.
The clarifying texts.
Yeah,
Yes.
let me
Like,
over explain
right.
myself and or maybe even overshare
Yeah.
so that you know everything, so that
Right.
I can prove why I deserve to feel this way or what I'm correcting the
Mm,
truth. Let me correct the perception.
right.
Such a fawn response, hard at work, trying to protect you, especially if you weren't heard growing up or you were often misunderstood.
Which is frequently perceived by others as being highly defensive, by the
Yes.
way. But
Yes,
like, okay.
absolutely.
But you're
Absolutely.
saying that this like, no, really, let me help you understand my point of
Yeah.
view. Yeah.
This urge to maybe it's have control of the narrative, and I don't mean that
Mm,
in a malicious way, but in a protective way, to feel understood,
yeah.
to release that, to release
Yeah.
the grip on that, and to lean back. Notice when you feel an urge to manage someone's emotion. Notice when you
Mm,
feel an urge to um, get ahead of someone's reaction, to
mm-hmm.
over-explain, to
Mm-hmm.
over-apologize, to overextend, allowing ourselves to lean back, and we're not leaving the room. This isn't a passive
Mm-hmm.
approach. It's leaning back, releasing urgency, pausing so that we can see it clearly. So we're not leaning back to be like, la-di-da, well, they'll just figure it out and I'm just floating through life.
Right.
There's not a passivity to it. It's seeing it clearly so that we can identify what's in my control and what's not.
Mm,
We can't control people's reactions. We can't control if someone is uncomfortable or disappointed in what we're saying. We can't control how someone is perceiving us. And it's so unfortunate, but it is the truth. We
if
cannot
only.
control it. That's
Mm-hmm.
not in our control. What is in our control? Our focus, our breath, our actions, our words, and to lean back so that we can pour our energy into what is in our control.
Mm-hmm.
That's the practice.
This is so good. And also just like that reminder, I cannot control other people. I cannot control what they think, how they feel. What I can be in charge of is myself.
Yeah.
And do I feel good about the way I am operating
Mm,
right now? Or am I going into some kind of weird relational anxiety response where I'm like, hyper focused on image management and needing to explain myself or, like just
yeah,
that self-awareness and being able to calm
absolutely.
down.
And
Yeah.
what I want to validate too is like
Mm-hmm.
that very process of looking inward. What's happening for me? What am I feeling right now? What am I
Yeah.
thinking? What story is my mind telling me? That is the healing because you're coming back to your internal world.
Mm-hmm.
Remembering that the fawn response is hyper focused on what's happening externally. By virtue of you looking in for a split second, that's enough. And starting another thing I'll add to that is what I like to call is, bite-sized portions of discomfort. Allowing ourselves to feel discomfort in a way that feels slow and safe
Mm-hmm.
is so important, especially for trauma healing. So we don't shock our nervous system to take whether it's breathing for 5 seconds or whether, it's it, you don't force yourself to be sitting with things that are uncomfortable for longer that you can tolerate because
Yeah.
every time you can just digest a little bit of discomfort, you're building self-trust
Mm-hmm.
and you're showing your body I can be uncomfortable and safe at the same time.
Yeah. Amazing.
Thank you so
So many
much.
actionable things. And I mean, just last personal share,
Yeah.
I can tell you that these things worked because I personally am in like a much better place with this than I
Mm,
was even like probably 10 years ago when I was younger. And
yeah,
just the strategies that you're describing, Meg, are like, what turned into me. I mean, I still have that reaction,
of
but then
course.
I can also be like, yeah, that is my default setting. And I
Yes.
always think that people are mad at me. So
Mhm.
maybe it's not actually true. Like that little internal conversation
Yes.
of being able to calm down, like, and I know I'm a N of one right here, but when this turns into all kinds of research studies with your name on them, I am certain that these strategies will
Thank
be,
you.
yeah,
Thank
like,
you so much.
yeah.
And that anxious voice I still have that
Oh,
anxious
yeah.
voice. I still have
It's there.
that people pleaser part.
Right.
Anxious voice, I just don't believe it as much. It's still
Yes.
there. It's just there's more distance. And so the
Right.
presence of it is not the problem. We're changing our relationship to it.
I
So
love that. The
yeah,
presence of it is not the problem. We're just changing our relationship with it. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. So much good stuff.
Thank you.
Well, okay. I know I want more Meg Josephson in my life. I'm sure our friends here with us today do too. Tell us where they would connect with you, go to
Yeah,
be friends with you, learn about your book, perhaps learn
absolutely.
about your services as
Yes.
psychotherapist.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Well, my book, Are You Mad at Me, is coming out August 5th, which is very exciting. And
Amazing.
you can find me on social media, just Meg Josephson.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a Substack, Peace of
Oh,
Mind by Meg Josephson. And I'm also going to be releasing a workshop, Are You Mad at Me workshop as well, that will practice a lot of the things that I talk about in the book, and we will meditate together and reflect together. And so I'm excited for that as well.
amazing. I'm so glad you're doing that, because otherwise, like all great ideas, right? But then it turns into that, okay, how? And so to,
Yeah.
have the opportunity to walk through the process with you. Is the workshop going to be that same time at the beginning of August, or is the timeline different? Do you have a wait list? Like what's
What I'm hoping to do
Mhm.
is have it be, a recorded thing that people
Oh,
can
okay.
do.
Well, thank you again so much for your time. This was such an interesting conversation. It was also fun, and I'm just so grateful that we got to get to know each other. And thank you on behalf of all of our friends for just sharing everything that you did
Thank you
today.
so much for having me, and it just felt so aligned, and I could talk about this forever with you, so
Good.
maybe we'll just pick
Well,
it up another time.
and if you're ever feeling a little like low and I need some validation right now, you hit me up anytime and I will tell you how amazing you
Oh
are.
my god,
And we'll just like have that be part of our
thank you.
relationship going forward. Okay, cool.
Hype girls.